And I would say a lot of people. There was, I think, in 2018, there was a report. That wasn't 2014. I'm going way back. There was a report by the DOJ that showcased right after the murder of Mike Brown, that showcased how much money that sheriff's departments and police stations make from taking in black people. Ferguson was number 1. Brooklyn Park, Minnesota was number 2. St. Paul, Minnesota was like number 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So it's not only, to be targeted because you're black, but also to be targeted as a, with an economic focus because you're black in terms of like paying fines and fees to a racist police department to allow them to buy the weapons and to staff the police departments. It all goes back to like, anti-blackness and capitalism and also an idea of racial capitalism. The idea that this system can deprave black people from economic viability, deprave black people from good educations, and then make money off of it. That's what this system in America is built off, and what we see here in Minnesota is the same thing. A lot of people for years talk about the racial disparities here in Minneapolis. We were in terms of racial disparities, Milwaukee was number 1, Minneapolis was number 2, and you talk about the lives and economic and social mobility of black people here. So this is something we've been dealing with for 20 years. So it's not just the police, it's also the ways in which we're able to make it up the economic ladder in terms of a job. You for a long time, before 2020, you didn't see a lot of black folks working for corporations. We had to come up with community-led solutions, and that has led us to the type of organization that you're seeing right now in this moment.
When Ferguson first started, the actual uprising, I relate to what you're saying because I went outside with close to, I believe, 16 warrants.
Yeah.
And me knowing I had that many warrants was part of the reason why I went and got a lawyer faster than a lot of people who were running around. Because I already knew I was going to jail. And a lot of people, and this is the real me, this form of me, a lot of people aren't used to. This is how I talk, very candid. I'm kind of done with the politically correct shit, you know what I'm saying? So it's like a lot of the bitch-ass niggas who was like, why the fuck Tef ain't got locked up yet? Because I really went out there with warrants. Fuck, boy, I'm really from the community.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I couldn't play with the police like that. So a lot of my guys that's really living there, too, that's what they kind of consider a lot of the activists to be doing is, quote-unquote, playing with the police. Like, people have real warrants. People can get really deported. And a lot of times they see the activist community as the guys that kind of go out there for the sport of playing with the police. How have y'all in this community kind of dealt with that, with black folks being so oppressed and y'all organizing on their behalf? How have you dealt with some of the stigmas that come with that?
I think about 2020 specifically. Within the month of George Floyd being murdered, we also had 3 shootings of children who were under the age of 10. 2 of those children died. One of them survived. And there was this entire conversation about, there was a call for defund the police. Defund the police, abolish the Minneapolis Police Department. And me, I'm an abolitionist at heart, so I'm like, hell yeah, let's abolish this and build what we actually need to build. And on the other side, we had, our aunties and our uncles and like the more like quote unquote black vanguard institutions saying like, no one's actually came to talk to us. And there was this duel of these different ideologies. One is like, we need the police because they keep us safe. And one of them was like, the data shows that they don't keep us safe. And I think one of the missteps that a lot of organizers made was not going to have those one-on-one conversations with our grandmas, our aunties, the brothers on the block. Because at the end of the day, I think that black people are very, very clear about the dynamics and a history of racial discrimination and murder and police brutality between the police and black people. But I do think that there's this idea that exists inside of our community about the permanence of police and the utility of police. One, we ask them to do too many things. 2, you think about how much we see police from Law and Order to Paw Patrol to RoboCop to Batman's a cop. You know what I mean? So like the idea,
Batman is actually a billionaire that beats up poor people on behalf of the police. Just to be clear.
Exactly. So
a lot of people say Batman is the fastest.
I mean,
if you really take that 30,000 foot level view, I love comic books, But
Yeah,
it's very,
man.
very clear with well, if Batman existed in a real world, he'd be beating the hell out of black people every single day. So let's be real. So I think that the point that I'm making is that there's a narrative about the need for the structures of police to keep quote unquote criminals in their place. But when you look at the pictures of these criminals, and you look at the numbers around arrests, the numbers around incarceration, a lot of times these criminals are people who look just like me and you. So when we think about like how people showed up in 2020 with the idea that we need police because our babies are getting killed. No, we don't need police. What we need is resources. What we need is spaces and community centers to reach out to the young brothers and sisters who are perpetrating these acts of violence. Because
Absolutely.
a community without resources and a community without a direction and a vision is a community that's going to continue to lose steam, and a community that's going to continue to be divested from because of lack of organization. So when
Absolutely.
we think about this conversation, we always got to remember that first and foremost, we don't need police. What we need is the opportunity to actually build our own shit.
Yeah. I went to see Jon Stewart speak a couple of nights ago. He said a lot of dope things, but one thing he said that was really dope was he said, the Constitution is affirmative action for white people.
Wow.
Which I thought was a bar.
Yeah.
I like
We
that.
can't talk about the history of policing without talking about the fact that just by our skin color, we are criminalized. And we can't talk about the history of policing without talking about that it started as slave patrol, what a lot of people know as modern police, and started here in America with them running and trying to catch runaway slaves. And so it's still that, which brings us into the situation now where back then it was the KKK hiding their faces. Now we got ICE agents hiding their face. What is really the difference between what the police represents and what the KKK represents at this point?
I think one thing to note, the timeline you just talked about, the Minneapolis Police Department didn't exist until Juneteenth. So it was, I think it was 6 months. I don't want to get the numbers wrong, but it was within a year of Juneteenth happening. And that there is a direct correlation between it. Minneapolis didn't believe it needed a police department until black folks got free.
That's right.
And that is like something that can never be forgotten. That's less than 160 years ago. That is not a long amount of time. Like it feels long, but it's not. And I think that is something that we often grapple with. We're grappling with it now in this exact moment where folks want MPD, our Minneapolis Police Department, to do more to protect immigrants. But then a lot of immigrants don't want to like actually call the police when they see ICE out their door. And it's just a very difficult conversation that a lot of folks, particularly black immigrants, are having right now, because a lot of them, honestly, a lot of us didn't see the problem with police. A lot of us really perceived ourselves as having a different experience. And I think a lot of us are now deeply grappling with how untrue that is, and are really learning what millions of folks already knew, and particularly what folks had learned since 2020. And we in particular have a very violent police department in St. Paul and Minneapolis. Like, not just like, the scale is incomparable to most states, and nobody thinks about it. But what they don't realize is that we have such a small black population, and we're so segregated. I think it's second to Milwaukee. We're one of the most segregated cities, where we really have very specific neighborhoods where black people live, and that is where almost all of the police violence is concentrated. Where I grew up, East St. Paul, we have the Eastern District, our local police department, which has a very hostile relationship with the locals. In Minneapolis, you have North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, the two highest populations of where black folks live. Rod had mentioned Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, that had the highest rate of ticketing. Guess what? The only black majority city in the state of Minnesota. So there's a direct correlation between police brutality and the places black folks live. And it took Minneapolis and Minnesota in general a long time to deal with that. And I think we're having a second reckoning with it right now as we're watching what black immigrants go through. And I think we're gonna have to have some really transformative moments after this, because the police weren't able to save us. We weren't actually able to call 911 and have a police officer get ICE escorted out of our buildings. That didn't happen. That didn't work. And now we have to figure out, what is a true long-form way that we're going to keep our community safe, because it wasn't our public safety system that we already had.
Which side are